Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. It's brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. We are in the new CHSN podcast studio for our maiden voyage.
Look at this. We don't get to see each other through screens anymore.
You finally met Edgar.
I finally met Edgar, our podcast producer, after a full year. So it's good to be in here.
It's great. A great location, obviously, here at the United Center, very close to Fifth Third Arena. Training camp got underway on this day, Thursday, bright and early this morning. Two different groups out on the ice. We'll get to some of the lineup situations, but just what was your overall takeaway? How many camps have you been to now?
9 or 10, I think 9.
Okay, so a very solid sample size. To me, this is one of the more competitive training camp opening days, and I was impressed with the speed.
For sure. Usually the first day of training camp is the conditioning portion of it. Yeah. It's like, all right, let's make sure that it's pure conditioning. But there were two groups in day one, team 1 and team 2. And both of them lasted almost 2 hours. Like, they were out there for a long time, and it was not sitting around. I mean, it was go, go, go. And that's exactly the kind of habits that Jeff Blashill wanted to instill in his roster right away. And he warned the guys in the summer. He said, show up to training camp on day 1 because we're not easing into things. We are going straight into it. And he sure lived up to his word.
One of the cornerstones, the traits that the Davidson regime has put front and center when it comes to drafting is speed. It is on display. I joked to you as we were watching, you know how the NHL puts the chips in the jerseys of the players, and we're able to check their top end speed and things of that nature, different stats throughout a game. I would love to have seen the stats of the skating and the miles per hour average of last year's training camp when we had the Patty Maroons and others, part of at the time, a very veteran group, and by design, compared to this year, where you've got Oliver Moore, you've got Slaggert, you've got Nazar, and everyone's trying to keep up. And it just raises the intensity level and the compete level. And again, it's a cornerstone of the drafting team, and it's what Blashill wants to see. Back checking, get in on the forecheck, D-men, make a tighter gap. And we saw that on display. Again, this is day 1. I don't want to drink too much of the Blackhawks Kool-Aid on day 1, but it was different. This is, I think, year 14 or so for me, and this was one of the more up-tempo practices, workouts that I've seen in my time.
Yeah, definitely quicker than last year, where there were the Pat Maroons and Craig Smith and Taylor Hall, some of those veteran-type presences that were there to serve as stopgap options while the young players develop. But now that they are going to be immersed into the NHL full time, and not just the speed up front, the speed on the back end is going to be noticeable as well with Rinzel and
They're
Levchinov.
big guys, but they can all skate.
They can all skate. And 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is obviously 6'6" as well. He can skate. Like, they're going to be able to move the puck out of their own zone pretty nicely this year.
All right, let's get into some of the lines. And one of the big topics we had was what would be the Bedard line, at least early on. And it was Donato, Bedard, and Burakovsky on the top line for team 1. And your thoughts on what you saw from that group in particular?
Yeah, so obviously I've been on record saying I would like Connor Bedard to play with 𝗵𝗏𝗃 𝗏𝗏 for the majority of this season. But because Ryan Donato had such a sensational last season and did so while playing on Connor Bedard's line, it made sense as to why Jeff Blashill said, let's bottle the magic that they had together last year, put them together, and we'll find the third winger on that line. And it ends up being Andre Burakovsky. And because Burakovsky wasn't on the roster last year, it's kind of it's fresh blood for Connor Bedard, so it's probably a fresh energy to that line as a whole. So Bedard and Donato have that built-in chemistry. Now Burakovsky, who says he's healthy, is feeling back to his normal self. I'm curious to see if he can return to the form that he was a few years ago, because if he taps into that form, then I'm intrigued to see what that line could be.
We talked to Bedard after the workout, and just a couple comments he had talking about the habits that Blashill is trying to instill. This is from Connor. Connor said, we're a fast team. We've got to use that, whether it's tracking, getting on pucks, hounding guys. You watch a team like Florida, they're always hounding guys, skating, and you don't really see much time and space out there. We want to eliminate the other team's time and space. That'll make us hard to play against. And now, like, it's hard to believe, he's 20 and this is his third training camp. But I asked him, compare the speed and the tempo and the compete of this first day versus 2 years ago. And his answer was, we can fly. We've got some of the fastest guys in the league. And like I said, that's how we need to play. You got to play to your strengths. And probably our biggest strength is our skating. We're young, we're energetic, we're going to hound teams. That's what we need to do to make it tough for them. I think that's exactly what Blashill wants to see. And we're finally starting to see the traits that we've heard about and that they have prioritized in the draft. We're now getting to see them on an NHL sheet together. The beginning of that process.
Yeah, the vibes definitely felt different this year than it has in years past. And even though in the standings it might look a little bit similar for Chicago this year, there's a different vibe because all the young guys are now starting to get under one roof and do things off the ice together, and now it's going to translate on the ice. We'll get to it in a little bit, but Nick Foligno hosted some of those guys at his place over the summer. I saw some of the guys reported early in September. There were some pictures of a couple of them that were in Wrigleyville out together. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff the early 2010 Blackhawks were doing when they were all young and they were all single and they were all, growing off the ice together because they know it's going to translate on the ice. And so there's a different vibe because it's like most of the guys in the locker room, or, 𝗍𝗏😅, Rinzel, Levshunov, Slager, all these guys that are starting to graduate to the NHL full time. It's like, okay, this is going to be our core group moving forward. And there's built-in excitement that it's like we get to start this journey finally together.
Yeah, and that's why in the last few years, the Hawks have changed their prospect camp to being an on-ice and off-ice camp to all off-ice. And it is about a bonding experience because these guys come together and then some of them go back to college. Some of them go to their OHL team. Some go to their WHL team. But now they've been together, 3 times over the summers over the last 3 years. And they're exchanging texts. And then when they're watching their teammate perform at Minnesota or Boston University or whatever, it's a text there. It's touch points. And right. And we're seeing that, and that can happen obviously in Rockford, and it happened for the Hawks when they won those 3 cups in 6 years. A lot of the success they had from the role players came from the bonds that they had that started in Rockford. We're seeing these bonds start before Rockford.
Right, and it's encouraging to see. And some of these players have built-in teammates already, like Rinzel and Oliver Moore, and 𝗍𝗏😅 played with some of those Americans at the World Juniors, and so he has that built-in rapport. And then Connor Bedard played with Korchinski and Colton Dach at the World Juniors a couple years ago for Team Canada. So there are like these built-in connections already with some of these players, and now they're all getting together in the same locker room, and it's got to be an enjoyable time for them.
Yeah, I think it ups the compete level too, because when Connor Bedard sees what 𝗍𝗏😅's speed brought to the table at the end of last year, I don't think it's coincidence that that's one of the top priorities he had and what he wanted to work on in this offseason. Let's get to some of the other lines that we saw on day one. Back to team one. It was Oliver Moore, Ryan Green, and Lukas Reichel on the second line. Boy, you hear about Oliver Moore's speed, and then when you watch it in real time, it's like he's shot out of a cannon. The amount of how he can make up time and space with his acceleration, it's incredible.
It's incredible. And we saw it at the rookie showcase in Minnesota too. He was on the penalty kill on the first game. And it's like, if you're a defenseman, you had to be on your toes because he can blow right by you for a shorthanded opportunity.
Well, think about how many shorthanded opportunities 𝗍𝗏 had because of that speed last year. You put those two together as a unit or split them up and divide and conquer. And we joked, it was like, how many breakaway opportunities did 𝗍𝗏 get per game down the stretch? Like now you're looking at Oliver Moore potentially having that type of opportunity himself. Think of how many bites at the apple that is of grade A scoring chances during a game. And again, it's supposedly when you're down a man and you're creating great offensive scoring chances for yourself.
Yeah, and this is kind of what Jeff Blashill was saying. We just talked to him like 30 minutes ago about guys that come to the NHL. They're probably their best player on their team, whether it's you're set up on the first power play unit on one of the flanks. You get to the NHL and you have to find a different way to carve out a role. And Oliver Moore, it's way too early to project exactly what role he's going to have with Chicago, but the fact that he can be a penalty killer, use the speed as a threat, makes him sort of a Swiss Army knife where you could put him wing, you could put him center, you could put him on the power play, you could put him on the penalty kill. And so I'm really curious to see how his development is going to transpire over the next year.
And when we saw Team 2 take the ice in the later session, it was 𝗏𝗏 𝗟𝗏, Frank 𝗍𝗏, and Tyler Bertuzzi as the top line there. Your thoughts on Bertuzzi and 𝗏𝗏 with 𝗍𝗏?
So it seems like Chicago wanted to carry over the momentum from last season when 𝗏𝗏 and 𝗍𝗏, Bertuzzi, it was that 4-game stretch where they finished 3-0-1. Those three were together for those 4 games. And so I think they're like, all right, let's just bottle up what they had. Let's try to carry that over into this training camp. And at some point, it's probably going to look differently. Bedard will probably see some different line mates as well. But there weren't any earth-shattering new lines where they're like, all right, Jeff is totally changing them up. I think he's like, let's just build off of what they had at the end of last season, ride it out, and then we'll adjust.
All right, so on that topic, we know Bertuzzi is habitually a slow starter in the National Hockey League. We know he has background with Blashill. They were together in Detroit. Jeff has made it abundantly clear. He called guys throughout or texted players throughout the summer and, gave them things to work on or what we're going to do and philosophies and what they thought about the Stanley Cup playoffs and whatnot. And also, like you mentioned off the top, be ready to go because we're going to skate. Tyler Bertuzzi, I hope, got the memo because, he with being out there with Frank 𝗍𝗏 and going at the speed that they were day one, he's going to feel it.
Yeah. And to defend him on some level too, obviously speed is not his kind of game, but if his line mates are playing fast, he also has to make sure that he's getting to his spots and he's getting to the front of the net and he's being that puck retrieval guy. But yeah, it's what was the famous Herb Brooks when he's like, we might not be the best team, but we're going to be the most well-conditioned team.
Yeah.
Like that might be Chicago when it's all said and done. Again.
One of the other lines in the Team 2 group was Colton Dach, Nick Foligno, the captain, and Sam Lafferty. Your thoughts on, we talked to Nick Foligno. And so, last year at this time, the Hawks were one of the oldest teams in the National Hockey League. And we talked about, they had the Martinezes, they had Craig Smith, Patty Maroons, Nick Foligno's, and there were a lot of them. Then Corey Perry. Obviously, all those guys except Nick have departed. And now they're being replaced with 21, 22, and 23-year-olds. And so they're one of the youngest teams in the National Hockey League. I thought it was a very cool thing. And for Nick Foligno to invite 7 teammates, and probably invited more, but only 7 were able to make it with their schedules, to come to Sudbury, Ontario, his hometown, where his brother Marcus has a place right next door. His dad has a place next door to him. And to have a bonding experience and also work out together.
I thought it was awesome by Nick Foligno, who gets it. And I don't want this to sound cliche, but you hear it all the time from current athletes that have won before and from retired athletes that have won before and have been on winning teams that say the best teams that I've been on are the ones that we were closest off the ice. Because when you have that friendship, you have that bond, you're building rapport off the ice. That way, when you translate it on the ice, you know that you're going to battle for the other. And there's that built-in trust, like, I'll run through a wall for you, and I know that you're going to run through a wall for me. And so for Nick to recognize that, listen, Foligno has been around. He's near the latter stages of his NHL career. He could easily just want to show up, collect his paycheck, just be a normal guy. But he is going out of his way to want to leave an imprint on this Blackhawks roster that he is likely never going to see as part of the Blackhawks in the long term. And so that is why he's wearing the C on his sweater, because he is molding this young group, showing them how to do it. So that way, when he's gone, those young guys, we're going to hear 10 years from now about the way that Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews talk about how important Marty Lapointe was.
Right.
These guys, the Bedards, the Nazars, they're going to be talking about how crucial Nick Foligno was to their ascension off the ice, but also on it.
You think about it, when you're in the twilight of your career, you I don't want to say become more selfish, but you're at an age difference that is not on the same level as the guys that are coming in. And to take that time to get the travel situation set up where everybody could come in, pay for quite a bit, create this bonding experience, create this competitive, have some fun, create the bonds. It's a selfless act, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going through the motions here in what could be his final year in Chicago or his final year in the NHL. We don't know that. But and it seemed like of all the camps he's been to, he said today, day one, was one of the toughest he's been a part of. And he seemed to welcome that challenge. He doesn't want to go off quietly into the distance. He wants to make a difference. And whether that's maybe not making it to the Stanley Cup final in his final season in the league or near the end of his career, it's going to be a foundational piece for what he hopes will lead to the Holy Grail.
Right. Like for Foligno, he easily, a couple years ago, I know his rights got traded to Chicago, or he got traded to Chicago, and he didn't have to willingly sign an extension with the Blackhawks. He could have just said, I want to go chase a cup at this stage in my career. But at where he was playing with Boston and Toronto, he found himself on the outsides, kind of the fourth line, in and out. And he's like, I don't feel like even if we won a Stanley Cup, I don't feel like I'm making an impact or helping the team. And so he's like, okay, how can I maybe reframe my purpose in this game? And he has found it in helping mold these younger players. Not that he doesn't want to win a Stanley Cup, because I'm sure that's still at the top of his priority list. But I think he's finding a purpose in being one of the important voices that some of these young players can lean on as the Blackhawks make the transition, or the young players as they graduate into the NHL and their careers advance.
We talked about how the intensity level has been raised, the compete level. We saw Doc get into it with Levshunov. It looked like Levshunov was trying to have some fun with it. It seemed like Colton Doc was not in a jovial mood, and I don't know how much Blashill likes to see players coming together. They didn't come to blows, but they were close.
They were close. I didn't see exactly what had transpired. Right when I turned to look, I just saw a stick fly in the air, and I think it was Levshunov lifting Colton Doc's stick, and it just sailed into the air. And Levshunov was laughing, kind of like went to go pat Colton, and Colton was very much not having it. To the point where Colton said, like, I'll go. Like, do you want to go? And Levshunov was still kind of laughing at I think he was having a hard time processing what was going on, because he thought it was, they were being teammates, they were being goofy. And then Colton didn't really stop after that. And Levshunov immediately turned serious and was like, oh, okay, I'll go if you want to. And I get Colton wants to make an impression at this training camp. I would stay away from the number 2 overall
for the
pick.
exhibition games or the preseason games.
This isn't a 𝗻𝗠cie Aiden Thompson type deal where they're don't let 𝗻𝗏𝗏 go, because he will go. 𝗻𝗏𝗏 is feisty. He will go, but that's not the time and place to do it.
I know Nick 𝗏𝗏𝗏 got some opportunities in Minnesota, wasn't able to cash in on them. The times he got opportunities today, he scored. You watch him and you're like, okay, that's why he put up insane numbers in the OHL last year.
Every time I looked at his when he was on the ice in every drill, it feels like he was going top shelf. He was finding the 5-hole. So I thought he had. You don't want to read too much into.
Yeah,
these.
I know. I feel like I can sense listeners and viewers like, okay, these two took a deep dive into the Blackhawks Kool-Aid, and they've got Nick 𝗏𝗏𝗏, following up his 60+ goals with 42 in the NHL.
Yeah, it's more so our eyes are validating what he did last year.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, he scored 71 goals. There's all this hype coming into training camp, and then you see some of those plays, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why he scored 71.
You want to see pop. You want to see glimpses of what, like, and quite frankly, like, use Lukas Reichel as an example. We haven't seen enough of those things over the years, and he's been given plenty of opportunity. So, again, small sample size for somebody like 𝗏𝗏𝗏, small sample size for Oliver Moore, but the traits that got them, and Blashill was asked, what is it going to take for some of these young guys to crack the lineup and be great at what they're great at? They realize that every player is not the perfect, most complete finished product. But if you're known as a speedster, be really good at that. Yeah. If you're known to bring the physicality like a 𝗻𝗠cie, do that. If you're, whatever the case may be, if that's your signature, make sure that signature is on every practice and every game.
Right. Play to your identity. Having said that, sometimes your identity has to change in the NHL. Like, you were maybe a top line guy in juniors, but then you get to the NHL. Like we said this, we've referenced this many times before, but 𝗻𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 was a great example where he was first line guy, first power play in Rockford, but then he would get called up, and it's like, hey, Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat are in those spots, so you're going to have to find a way to make an impact differently. And so I thought it was interesting that Kyle Davidson said this is flat out a prove-it year for Lukas Reichel.
Prove-it camp, right? Prove-it camp, prove-it year.
Correct. Because, yeah, there is no guarantee. We just went through the line. So the first line, Donato Burakovsky, Donato Bedard-Burakovsky. I think the second, Teravainen and Nazar Bertuzzi. I think we might have skipped the third line, Slaggert, Dickinson, Mikheyev. Fourth line, Dach, Foligno, Lafferty. So I'm combining the two teams about what, and if you look at what the fifth line was, Moore, Green, Reichel. So Reichel's on the outside of those four line rotation, which validates what Davidson is saying. This is a prove-it camp. So you're starting on the outside, and you have to show us why you belong inside the top 12, and not just on the top 12. We talk about players playing to their identity. Reichel is an offensively minded player. He played majority on the fourth line last year. That's just not his role. And so if he wants to crack this roster, he's going to have to do it inside in the top 9. And I'm just not sure he's ever going to get there here in Chicago.
So we'll obviously keep an eye on that. The question mark coming into camp was Wyatt Kaiser going to sign the extension, or was he going to be a holdout? And at the last hour, last night, he agrees to a 2-year deal, a $1.7 million AAV. Good to see Kaiser in camp. And again, it's going to add to, I think the strength of this team right now is the blue line and the young blue line. And it's going to be very fun to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. So I wasn't in the scrum because we were talking to Nick Foligno, but I guess Wyatt was making a joke that you want to win the game in the third period, but we had to go in overtime with this contract negotiation. And so it was nice to finally get it done. And for Wyatt specifically, I thought it was important because he's kind of a player that's pegged to play with Artem Levshunov this year. And they had chemistry last year. Those are the two. That was the duo that played the majority together when 𝗏𝗏 was in the NHL. And it's important because if Kaiser solidifies himself on the Blackhawks defenseman pairing, most notably with 𝗏𝗏, that could play into his favor long term to see if Kaiser and 𝗏𝗏 work well together. Kaiser potentially has a role here in the long term. So I'm glad to see that get done, that it's not overhanging and that it was going to spill into training camp. It was nice to see the two sides that were able to get a contract done the night before camp opened.
The update on Laurent Brossoit is not a good one. Yet another injury in the sense of he had hip surgery this offseason, and the timetable for him is no time soon. So, his wild ride here in Chicago that has been injury-riddled continues.
Yeah, unfortunate update, but that's kind of what we were hearing on Tuesday when we did this podcast, that he was not going to be available for probably the first half of the season. And it's unfortunate because I actually think we forgot to follow up on whether his knee is actually healthy. I imagine his knee is healthy, but now it's the hip injury. And I think Kyle was asked point blank, is this something that could be potentially career ending or whatever? And he said it most definitely is not. Like Brossoit plans to play. And so we'll see how that shakes out. But unfortunate news for him. I'm sure that's a frustrating, because he was legitimately one of the best backups in the NHL. And so for him to go into year two, he's basically almost going to play his entire Blackhawks tenure not on the ice. And so that's really unfortunate for both the player and the team.
Anything else stand out to you during Kyle Davidson's press conference?
I thought you mentioned, you brought up a really good point about, you asked Kyle Davidson point blank about the 𝗂𝗍 and whether he's eligible for that slot to go to the AHL as a 19-year-old. That does not apply this year. So I think that's going to be something that the new CBA will kick in next year.
So he's either NHL or he's back to the CHL, in his case, the OHL.
Yeah, and he didn't play the third period of the second game of the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase with an injury. We got word from Kyle Davidson that it's a shoulder injury, but it's only going to sideline him 7 to 10 days. I say only, but that's half of training camp, so that's really unfortunate. But it's encouraging that it's not a longer-term thing that could spill into his OHL season or, potentially NHL. But I don't see that happening.
All right, the vibe just felt lighter. It felt different. It felt like they had a purpose on the ice, and therefore we had a purpose to witness it and to say, like, okay, how's this piece going to work? Like, I am genuinely intrigued at which players are going to make it. And again, we come from the camp with overripe and down the AHL. It's not a sprint to get these guys to the NHL, but I like the glimpses of the things that they're great at. I'm seeing that in front of my eyes.
What excites me about this season is I believe in the players. Like, I believe in Bedard. I believe in Nazar. I believe in Rinzel and 𝗏𝗏 and Spencer Knight. But I also believe in Jeff Blashill and the coaching staff to coach this next wave of group. And so I think that's what gets me excited, that it's like, okay, this is an NHL head coaching staff. Blashill has been around college, internationally. The USHL. He's been a head coach at every single level. And it excites me that they're going to have their fingerprints on molding this young group. And last thing I'll say, I forgot to mention this when we were talking about our early impressions of training camp. The one thing I did notice is anytime there were two things that happened where Blashill made the team skate. He went to they would go to the wall, skate to the wall and back during the middle of a drill. If two things happened, one, if there was a turnover, two, if there was a missed pass, and that happened several times. One in particular, I can't remember which line it was. It happened twice on the same shift. There was a missed pass, and he goes like, skate to the far wall and back. He blew the whistle, skate, far wall, back. They did it again, missed pass, blow the whistle, skate. And so Nick Foligno had mentioned that too when we were talking to him, and that's the kind of accountability that you want to see Blashill instill in them, because if you're instilling that in practice, those, like, even just the passes, that's something, the 2010, 13, 15 Blackhawks team, I remember I was sitting watching a morning skate, and there was a dad's trip. I think it was the Dallas Stars were in town. There was a dad's trip. I was sitting next to the dads, and one of the dads was from Dallas was like, I've never seen a team pass this well. Like, it was just crisp passes. Those are the Blackhawks, right?
Yeah.
And so just those little things, that the attention to detail that Blashill is trying to instill on this Blackhawks roster is encouraging. So I'm glad he was holding those players accountable early on, and just those little details from him.
That is going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. So long from the CHSN Podcast Studios in the United Center. We will catch you next time.